Right now, somewhere on your phone, there is a symbol. You have seen it thousands of times. You tap it without thinking. It connects your headphones, your speakers, your car. You have probably never once wondered where it came from. It is two Viking runes, combined into one shape. They are the initials, the personal initials, of a man who died over 1,000 years ago. His name was Harald Gormsson. History knows him as Harald Bluetooth, a Viking king who united a fractured people into a nation, built monuments that still stand today, and spread his genetic line across northern Europe through war, faith, and fire. And then his own son led an army against him. Harald fled. He died in exile, alone, in a foreign land. His son erased his name from the royal records. But you carry his name on your phone, and if you have any Scandinavian, British, Irish or Northern European ancestry at all, you almost certainly carry something else of his as well. His DNA. This is the Danish DNA mystery, and this is the full story of the Viking king hiding in your pocket. Before we go any further, I want to tell you something about Harald's DNA that most people find genuinely surprising. Harald Bluetooth almost certainly carried a Y chromosome haplogroup called I1. This is the signature haplogroup of the Norse peoples, the genetic fingerprint of the Vikings themselves. It is found today at its highest frequencies in Scandinavia, particularly in Norway, Sweden and Denmark, and it appears wherever Viking ships ever landed: Britain, Ireland, Iceland, Greenland, Normandy. But here is the part that surprises people. Haplogroup I1 did not arrive in Scandinavia from somewhere else. It grew here. Its origins trace back approximately 4,000 to 5,000 years to Northern Europe, and the specific expansion that produced the Viking Age lineages we can track today is intimately connected to Denmark specifically, to this exact corner of the world. By the end of this video, we will know exactly what Harald's DNA reveals, and why scientists tracking ancient DNA across Europe keep finding his genetic signature in places he never personally visited. But first, we need to understand what Danish DNA actually is. Because Denmark is not one people. Denmark is an archive. To understand Harald Bluetooth's DNA, you need to understand the layers beneath it. The oldest layer belongs to the Mesolithic hunter-gatherers who arrived in Denmark as the ice retreated around 12,000 years ago. These were tall, dark-skinned, blue-eyed people, a combination that surprises most modern viewers. The famous Cheddar Man found in Britain belonged to this same population. Their genetic signature still runs through Scandinavian populations today. Then came the Neolithic farmers from Anatolia, modern Turkey, around 6,000 years ago. They brought agriculture, domesticated animals, and new genetic profiles. They built the megalithic tombs, the dolmens and passage graves that still dot the Danish landscape. Then, around 3,000 years before Christ, the steppe nomads arrived, the Yamnaya people, carrying haplogroup R1b and a new technology, the domesticated horse. They swept across Europe, and their DNA is now found across the continent. In Denmark, this migration was dramatic. Ancient DNA studies show a near-complete population replacement in some areas within just a few centuries. These three layers, hunter-gatherers, Anatolian farmers and Yamnaya steppe nomads, fused over millennia into the people we call the Germanic tribes. And one branch of those tribes, settled in the peninsula and islands of what is now Denmark, became the Danes. Harald Bluetooth was the man who first gave them a name, a nation, and a king. Harald was born around 935 AD, the son of two remarkable people. His father was Gorm the Old, the man most historians consider the first king of a unified Denmark. Gorm was a pagan. He worshipped the Norse gods. He ruled from Jelling, a small settlement in the heart of the Jutland Peninsula, and he fought constantly to hold the Danish tribes together under a single authority. He was, by all accounts, hard and unyielding. His nickname was not Old because of wisdom, it was Old because he seemed to have always been there. His wife was Thyra. She is one of the most fascinating and frustratingly obscure figures in Danish history. Sources describe her as a woman of extraordinary intelligence and political skill. She is credited with organising the defences of the southern Danish border, the great earthwork known as the Danevirke, protecting the kingdom against the Frankish Empire pressing from the south. Gorm loved her absolutely. When Thyra died, he built a great burial mound for her at Jelling and raised a runic stone in her memory. It is the first known use of the word Denmark, Tanmarkar, in any written or carved record. Gorm died shortly after Thyra, reportedly of grief. Harald inherited a kingdom, a legacy, and a standard he would spend his entire reign trying to match. He would build something that dwarfed anything his parents had attempted, and then his own son would tear it apart. Harald became King of Denmark around 958 AD. He inherited a fractured realm. The Danish tribes, the Jutes, the Danes, the people of the islands, were united in theory under Gorm's line, but constantly pulled apart by local loyalties, Norse raiding culture, and the permanent pressure from the Holy Roman Empire to the south. Harald's first challenge was simply surviving. The German Emperor Otto I pressed north with a Christian army, demanding tribute and conversion. Harald, unlike his father, negotiated rather than fought. He accepted baptism, officially at least, in approximately 960 AD. But Harald's Christianity was always political first. He used the church as an administrative tool. He brought German bishops to Denmark, not because he had seen the light, but because bishops could read and write, could administer laws, could keep records. He was building a state, not saving souls. And the DNA Harald carried, the I1 haplogroup of the Norse people, was already spreading across Europe through the Viking expansion that had begun 2 centuries before him. Danish Vikings had settled the Danelaw in England in the 1860s. Danish settlers had given Normandy its name, and its first duke, Rollo, in 911. Danish traders and warriors had founded Dublin, York, and dozens of other settlements across Britain and Ireland. Harald did not start this expansion, but he would organise it, he would systematise it. He would build the infrastructure that turns Danish raiding into Danish power. Around 965 AD, Harald erected the most important monument in Danish history. At Jelling, the royal seat of his family, he built 2 enormous burial mounds, one for his father Gorm, one for his mother Thyra. Between them, he placed 2 massive runestones. The smaller stone had been placed there by Gorm in memory of Thyra. Harald added a larger one. The inscription on that larger stone, the great Jelling Stone, is sometimes called the birth certificate of Denmark. He united Denmark, he extended his reach into Norway, though historians debate how complete that control ever truly was, and he converted his people. The Jelling Stones are now UNESCO World Heritage Monuments. They stand at Jelling to this day, 1500 years later, in the town where this man sat and planned the future of Northern Europe. And carved into that stone is the word Denmark, Tanmarkar. The first time that name, for this nation, for this people, appears in any written or carved record in human history. He named it. In doing so, he created it. Around 980 AD, Harald built something that still astonishes archaeologists. Across Denmark, he constructed a series of perfectly circular ring fortresses: Trelleborg, Aggersborg, Fyrkat, Nonnebakken. Each one built to identical geometric specifications, each one positioned to control a key strategic location, each one capable of housing hundreds of warriors. The mathematical precision of these fortresses, built without modern surveying equipment in the 10th century, is extraordinary. The circles are so close to perfect that researchers initially assumed they must have been reconstructed in a later era. They were not. These were not defensive structures, they were staging posts. Harald was not hiding behind walls, he was organising an army. The question historians still debate is, against whom? Was he preparing for a German invasion from the south? Was he planning further campaigns in Britain and Norway? Or was he already by this point preparing against the threat he could not name, the ambition of his own son? The answer, as it so often is in history, was probably all three. Harald Gormsson, who died in exile in 986 AD, who was overthrown by his own son, whose name was erased from the royal records, has his initials on approximately 5 billion active devices worldwide right now. He connected his people, and then, 1200 years later, his name became the word we use for connection itself. Not by design, not by plan, by accident, in a Toronto bar, over beers, on a winter night in 1997. Harald's son was named Sweyn. History knows him as Sweyn Forkbeard for his distinctive split beard. He was ambitious, ruthless, and entirely his father's son, which made him the most dangerous person in Denmark. The relationship between Harald and Sweyn deteriorated throughout the 980s. The sources are incomplete and contradictory, but the outline is clear. Sweyn believed his father had grown weak. The German emperor was pressing from the south. The Norwegian alliance was fraying. Harald's Christian administration had created enemies among the Old Norse aristocracy, who resented the influence of bishops and priests. Sweyn exploited every fracture. Around 986 AD, Sweyn led an open revolt against his father. Harald was wounded in the fighting. The man who had united Denmark, who had built the Jelling Stones, who had constructed the most sophisticated military fortresses in northern Europe, who had converted a nation, fled. He crossed the Baltic. He reached Jomsborg, a Viking stronghold in the coastal region of what is now northern Poland. He had allies there, old connections from decades of Scandinavian political networks. He died there, of his wounds, alone, far from the kingdom he had spent his life building. Sweyn did not mourn publicly. He took the throne, consolidated his power, and within a generation his son Canute would conquer England and rule 3 kingdoms simultaneously. The dynasty Harald built became the most powerful in northern Europe, through the son who destroyed him. Now, the DNA. Harald Bluetooth carried haplogroup I1. We cannot say this with absolute certainty. No DNA has been extracted from remains definitively identified as his, but the evidence is as strong as it gets for this era. Ancient DNA studies of Viking Age Danish burial sites show I1 as the dominant Y chromosome haplogroup among the Danish ruling and warrior classes. Harald's family, the Jelling dynasty, were at the centre of Danish military and political power for 3 generations. The genetic probability that he carried I1 is extremely high. What does that mean? Haplogroup I1 originated in northern Europe approximately 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. Unlike R1b, which swept in from the steppe, 1.1 is what scientists call a legacy haplogroup. It descends from the ancient hunter-gatherers who were already in northern Europe when the farmers and steppe nomads arrived. It survived their arrival. It persisted. It is one of the oldest continuous paternal lineages in European genetic history. By the Viking Age, I1 was the dominant male lineage across Scandinavia. And when Harald's successors, his son Sweyn, his grandson Canute, conquered England and ruled Norway, they carried I1 into the British royal bloodline. When Harald's contemporaries settled Iceland and Greenland, they carried I1 to the edge of the known world. When Rollo established Normandy in 911 and his descendants became the kings of England, I1 followed. If you have British, Irish, Scandinavian, Northern French or Icelandic ancestry, there is a significant probability that haplogroup I1 runs through your family line. Through the same genetic thread that ran through the man whose initials are on your phone. Harald Bluetooth died in exile, betrayed, forgotten by the kingdom he created. Or so his son intended. The Jelling Stones still stand. The Trelleborg fortresses have been excavated and studied by archaeologists from across the world. The word Denmark, first carved by Harald's order, is still the name of the country. The Christian church he established shaped Danish culture for 1,000 years. Sweyn Forkbeard thought he had erased his father. He had no idea his father was already everywhere. That is the Danish DNA mystery. That is Harald Bluetooth.